Welcome to the Connected Ministry series. I'm Brad Hill. I'll be your host today, and this series is being brought to you by Gloo. Gloo, if you don't know, is the trusted platform that helps release the collective might of the church, of organizations, of denominations, networks, ministry leaders just like you. And we're thrilled to be including this Next Gen series as part of the overall Connected Ministry series that we're producing. And if your church is looking for more ways to get connected with new people in your community, we might have just the solution for you. We'd love for you to learn more about it and check it out. You can go to Gloo, that's Gloo, gloo.us/reach. So as we continue in this Next Gen moment sort of mini series that we're doing, we're helping church leaders faithfully invest in and equip the next generation. And we have got an incredible guest today. I'm joined by Alyce Youngblood. Alyce is the executive editor at Barna, and she has a lot of great insights and fresh writing to share and really some thoughts that I think are going to help all of us as leaders today. So Alyce, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I'm happy to be here.
So Alyce, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been leading at Barna, this idea of next gen, and especially around generosity. This
hmm
has been just, I think, a fascinating, really set of insights that you guys have surfaced. Many of us are hearing a lot of ideas out there. There's even some stereotypes floating around about how generous and what are the giving patterns that we see. But you guys have been collecting data around this area of the next gen and generosity. So I wonder if can you just set the table for us a little bit and kind of guide us through what have been some of the main findings that you guys have surfaced?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey that we've been on in this broader State of Generosity series, and now we're really starting to shine a light on the generational data and specifically this next generation. And there are stereotypes, there are assumptions. If you look at older generations, they're pretty pessimistic when it comes to the future of generosity and charity. They're not sure how the baton is going to be passed, but we actually see a lot of promise and encouragement, I would say, about how young people are beginning to show up and embody their own expression of generosity. So they care about a range of causes. They think about generosity in a lot of different terms, not just money, but also giving their time, giving of hospitality, and they ultimately just feel it's important to be generous. This is a value of the next generation. And of course, there's areas they need coaching. They're still young, they're still in formative years, especially Gen Z, even just learning about education around their finances, around stewardship. That's all new to them. So there's certainly areas of improvement that we see. That church leaders, nonprofit leaders, educators should take seriously. But overall, I would just say that they're not the donors and volunteers that we know. This is a new era, truly, of giving. That's why we've titled our upcoming report "A New Era of Giving," and ultimately, there's a new playbook that is needed to really connect with millennials and now Gen Z as they seek to step into this value of generosity that they hold quite close to their heart. So there's a lot of promise, and I think time will tell how they embody that in their lives and in the church.
Yeah, I love how you said, that they are considering generosity more broadly than just finances. And
hmm
that's obviously something over the years that we've tried to engender probably in all generations. But are there significant differences? Could you mark, Alyce, like, hey, between Gen Z and Gen X and Boomers and from old to young, are there distinctives that you guys pulled out on how this younger generation is really thinking about this?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones is volunteering. If you look at just self-reported volunteering over the last few months, Gen Z is actually the most likely to say that they have given of their time to a nonprofit, and actually significantly more likely if you look at boomers or elders. So according to them, they are showing up in that way, and that's really distinct. Some of that could be stage of life. They can't cut checks the way that an elder could. But that's pretty encouraging, that young adults are showing up in that way, and millennials as well. They really carry on this pattern of volunteering. And then another thing that stands out, though, and I would say is an area for improvement or for focus, especially for church leaders who might prioritize this. Um, Gen Z really doesn't understand tithing. If you look at Christians in particular, that's another way they stand out is that they have really organic expressions of generosity that kind of come from this posture of their heart, but it's not really rooted in having been taught about the tithe or having been given a lot of scriptural roots or foundations. So actually, half of Gen Z says, or sorry, Gen Z Christians says they don't know what the tithe is. They actually are just completely unfamiliar with the concept. That
Wow.
doesn't mean I know it's pretty
Yeah.
high.
And does that extend, does that also, I mean, tithe is obviously a very specific principle, like you're saying. Does that extend also to frequency? Like, are they less likely to set up regular timed giving and more likely to give sporadically? Or did you guys get into the cadence at all?
Yeah, they actually do recurring donations. That's something that they are prone to do. Some of them are naturally finding their way to what you might call a traditional tithing practice, in that they say, I give this certain proportion at this cadence. But they don't know what it is. It's actually just something that they've found their way to. So I think that's something that if you were a church leader or you work with a faith-based nonprofit and it matters to you that a Gen Z Christian feels really rooted in why they do the things that they do, that's something that they are kind of sorting out on their own. So the data right now just shows a lack of understanding of principles like that, and it kind of just increases as you look at older generations.
So that's exactly where I wanted to go. So okay, so the whole question you all asked why they give, it sounds like maybe it's less about they understand the principles perfectly and they're rooted in tithe and some of those principles. But what did you learn about why they do give, even if it's like you said earlier, organically? What causes them to push the give button?
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite findings of this whole study. It doesn't matter who you ask across ages, across demographics, across backgrounds. When you ask people why they give, the number one response is, I give because of who I am. Across age groups, this is common ground. Roughly two-thirds of each generation says, I give because of who I am. And they select that more than I give because of who is asking me, how they are asking me. And to me, that just speaks to this really deeply personal motivation behind how people might show up generously. And so it's less of a transaction, it's less of an obligation. And to me, it just makes that case that you really have to understand who Gen Z is. And if you're hoping to, um, have more of their engagement in your church, or you're hoping to connect with Gen Z supporters, if you don't know who they are, you're probably going to miss some things, and your messaging or your appeals to giving or appeals for engagement, they need to come from this place of knowing anyone you're talking to, they're giving because of who they are. They're giving because it connects to them on a deeply personal level, and that's gonna speak to them much more than maybe some of the other more logistical things that come with a giving responsibility.
Okay. Wow. So this few thoughts. So I mean, number one, Alyce, this feels like once again an area where Barna's been a little bit ahead because you all, of course, have been for years now talking about knowing your people, getting a pulse on the person that you're serving so you can make better decisions. And what I'm also hearing is that, I mean, so often in the church, when we talk about giving or volunteering, it's because we need something or there's an opportunity that maybe you can step into. And instead, you're saying, hey, the more you know about the individual, the giver, You can create, I mean, it almost sounds like you're saying there's a call here to tailor and personalize to an extent, connecting that person with an opportunity to express generosity as opposed to just something institutional that we should all do because we're sitting in a building.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And yeah, it's probably going to create more opportunities for people to, walk with you for the long run, because they can see themselves in it, they can grow with you. So yeah, it's definitely something that to me is not unique to the new generation. Everyone feels this way, but it does mean you need to actually understand the distinctions between different groups.
That's great. Well, we'll share some links here in a moment, including barnaaccess.com, where they can read more of this. We're going to keep talking here, but I wanted to inject another plug. You guys have an incredible assessment, the Generosity Pulse,
Hmm.
which is another great tool. I just can't help but think like that's really useful for taking action on that insight that you just shared to know your people
Yeah,
better.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to specifically go into this volunteering just for a moment. And you had a statement around Gen Z, really, in a sense, almost leading the way around this idea of volunteering. And you shared earlier, maybe that's partly because of capacity. Maybe I don't have money, but I have time. But can you unpack any more like what you all learned around specifically volunteering and Gen Z?
Yeah, so like I said, half of Gen Z says they've done so in the past 3 months. And that's pretty high. And we see that decline for older generations. And I would say, too, for them, we've got to consider mobility might change. There's a lot of reasons that this might be affected by your stage of life and your position. But it's interesting to me that this is something that, even if Gen Z is exaggerating, maybe they're not volunteering quite as much. We always have to consider that with self-reporting. It's something that they clearly value, and I think it speaks to this general profile of younger people, and I would say millennials as well, and now Gen Z. They are very hands-on and they're very communally oriented. You have to keep in mind too, these are more diverse generations than we've seen before them. And so they tend to operate socially in just a different way. They have more diverse friendships. They're very motivated to be connected with their community. They say that they really value reaching across differences. And so it doesn't surprise me just looking at the whole of the data we have about Gen Z and about millennials that as they think about the ways they might be generous, they really want to show up in that way and they want to be relational and present. And so I don't think it precludes them from growing into more of a charitable giving habit in the future. And, that remains to be seen. But it makes a lot of sense to me that that's something that they would say at minimum they value and prioritize, if not something that they're, regularly doing in their own life.
Mhm. So we're speaking largely here to church leaders today, and just knowing, as you said, that these younger generations take great care. You even had some reference in the report about doing research before they make a decision, whether it's to volunteer or to give financially or in some other way. Are there practical ideas, Alyce, that a pastor or leader might consider in terms of setting the table well so that someone in a younger generation feels equipped, feels acknowledged, like, yeah, we understand you want to do this level of kind of thought, prayer, research before you decide to jump in. What should a pastor be thinking about?
Oh, there's so much. One thing I would mention is I previously talked about, they might not understand a tithe, they might not have some of these other teachings in mind, but they do see generosity as a spiritual discipline. They do say, I pray about my giving, and it's something that they see as spiritual. So that is something you can tap into. Um, they already want to see it as part of their broader expression of faith. A second thing I would mention is just to your point about they research. It matters a lot to them, that they have clear information about causes they are supporting. And I would extend this more broadly from just fundraising or giving to just their spiritual journey or the pastors that they follow. We actually saw in some other research that they say they want a pastor who's honest about their doubts. It To them, they want to see authentic leadership that's transparent, and that really, gives them a full picture, I think, of the leader that they are choosing to follow or the people that they are seeking advice from. They want that honesty, and that matters a lot to them. So I would say in their communication, especially to Gen Z, how are you trying to embody those qualities, I think, in your own life, as a leader personally, but then how does your church, your organization really value transparency and trust and just that authentic relationship, to the people that you're communicating with? So those are just a couple of things I would mention is like, assume they already have this spiritual sensibility, this spiritual openness, and they probably want to talk to you about it. And they aren't necessarily looking for all the answers. They just want your honesty and your presence, I think, as they really sort out anything. That could be their generous expression, but also other things about vocation and faith. Those are the qualities that they're looking for in that relationship.
That's helpful and reassuring. Yeah. And I'm curious to just a couple last questions. Since the study here was really generational, I'm mindful a lot of pastors are probably in a situation where they are beginning to serve, a larger cohort of younger generations while they still have Gen X boomers, elders in the congregation as well, this intergenerational reality. How might you think about shifting, and you said earlier, like developing a new playbook with what we're learning while not alienating maybe other generations that have, shall we say, a more traditional approach to all this?
Yeah, that's the big question, I think. We're continuing to unpack that. We will do, I think, more analysis even on that in our state of generosity work. Um, I think the thing that would come to mind for me, and this is even just speaking as a millennial, is to really recruit the older people in your community or in your congregation to be a part of that effort. And that isn't just so that they can invest in younger generations, but I think it is truly intergenerational. We've asked, old and young, what do you think you can learn about, from people who are older than you, from people who are younger than you? Generosity is actually an area that's really ripe because young people say, I could learn about finances and giving from older people. And so that's something where it should be part of your strategy to next generation to be reaching the older generation. And those two will always go together. I've got even just above my computer just a picture of a late friend, an old friend, who was in her 80s and was at my church and just took me under her wing. Like she just saw me and chose me. And in some ways, it kept me going sometimes. Like it kept you attending, it kept you present. It gave you connections that you might not have with anyone else who's your age. And so I think really meaningfully including the older generations in your approach to connecting with younger people. Because, like I said, Gen Z is already very communally minded. They probably already have broad and diverse networks, and they are looking to connect. And that might not be the case with older people. They might need a little more convincing. But there's so much richness, I would think, and especially in a church body, where you might have more natural opportunities to connect them.
Well, you've done a great job today dispelling the myth that, these younger people just don't give. So this is fascinating. I think it's a beautiful thing as you're describing, someone who maybe isn't an older generation, the message that, hey, you're seen, you're valued, you're needed. Like your expertise, your wisdom, just your presence is important in shepherding this younger generation as we kind of go through the cycle. So I think that intergenerational connectedness, generosity may give us a really good domain in which to live that out. Um, we have a little bit shifting gears as we wind down, Alyce. This is part of our overall connected ministry series. So I just wanted to invite you, as we always do with our guests, to just give your kind of unvarnished perspective. When we talk about connected ministry or seeing the church, kind of envisioning a more connected church, what comes to mind? What do you think about with all that you're learning at Barna, what a connected church could look like?
Yeah, so at Barna in particular, and something that has always drawn me to the work that we do is I think that um, data itself has kind of this truth-telling quality that builds bridges. And for me, and I think for our broader team of, researchers and producers and, journalists, there's this opportunity we have to see the big picture, and that produces empathy. I think it helps you get past assumptions, it helps you get past stereotypes. And so that's something that, yes, I see in my work, but I think I would apply to that question of like, how does the church become more connected? Which is just curiosity in general, and making sure that those both the questions you're asking and the ways in which you're seeking to answer them, they can really foster empathy. They can draw you closer to other people. And then I think the other thing that we worked on a project as well called the Connected Generation, and that focused on young people. And it really looked at what I think this series is trying to tackle, which is that duality today of we're more connected than ever, and in some ways we're more disconnected than ever. And young people feel that profoundly. Um, in this report, even on A New Era of Giving, we talk about how they are anxious. And for all of their communal orientation that I've been talking about, they still struggle to connect. They still deal with loneliness and deal with this sense that they aren't fully supported by the people they know. And as I think about how the church can approach that, I would say um, young people want you to go there with them. They want to talk about mental health. They want to talk about emotional health. And in fact, they say they would be more likely to attend your church if you care about those things. So I think that, going back to my earlier points about authenticity, um, just kind of putting your cards out there and being open to the fact that there is this tendency towards disconnection or tendencies toward isolation and anxiety, and getting really real about that. And that's something that will just speak volumes across generations. And I think opens doors, whether or not you know everything about those topics or you feel fully ready, to get in the weeds, just acknowledging the problems and being like, this is a place where you can come to process those things. Um, those are things that young people say, sign me up. Like, that's the kind of church I would attend. So, yeah, those are just a couple things I would think of as, that general curiosity and empathy. But then just be real about how hard it can be to be connected and to be shoulder to shoulder with people. That's not easy, but that's yeah, I think what people are longing for.
Yeah, no, what a great note to end on. I mean, for a leader, especially, permission to be yourself, be authentic. That curiosity is so key. And then also, as you said, we don't always need to have every answer, but we might just need to be there to be a guide, to be listening, to help as this younger generation sort of comes into their own and processes through these very very real issues.
Yeah, and partner with people who do know. Like you can, those resources are out there, those connections are out there, and if you're just the safe space that pulls them together, like what an amazing opportunity.
Well, Elise, you've brought tons of wisdom today. We thank you for that. And you all have been hard at work over there. Barna has, it's a 9-part series, The State of Generosity. And what we're kind of diving into today, and would invite everybody to go check out. This next issue is called A New Era of Giving. And it's available for everybody to look at. It's on Barna Access. You can go there yourself. It's barnaaccess.com. We'll have that link available on the page where you're watching as well. But Alyce, thanks so much for joining us today. You guys are doing really important work, and we're glad we could get your insights on here to share with leaders today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're happy to, and always happy to talk about these things with Gloo.
Awesome. Well, you can read all of the State of Generosity report by going to barnaaccess.com. And thank you also for watching, and thanks for being here for the latest episode in the Connected Ministry series. This is where we connect you with the ideas, with the people, the resources, and opportunities so that you can stay connected and hopefully be the antidote to this disconnection we were just talking about. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.